What constitutes and sort of makes up a fiscal sponsor agreement, I think is actually a very important topic for people that are considering engaging the services of fiscal sponsors. My goal in this particular segment is to give you some understanding of things that you should be looking for as it relates to the agreement itself, so that you are knowledgeable about the subtlety and nuances and things that the agreement should cover, okay? So I'll kind of go through some of those topics for you. I don't believe in a black and white agreement, meaning that like sort of every fiscal sponsor agreement should be saying certain things versus others. There is a negotiation. A lot of sort of the cost for fiscal sponsor services is directly related to the amount of time that the fiscal sponsor spends on these services. So your fees should be commensurate with really quite frankly the service that you're getting. So that's something important for you to kind of be cognizant of, which probably starts off with what are the services that a fiscal sponsor provides. Quite frankly, it's all across the board. For the most part, we'll get into this deeper, but there's two different kinds of fiscal sponsors. I'll mostly deal with what I call Model A fiscal sponsorship, which really has to do with what would be more comprehensive fiscal sponsor services, which is full financial accounting. That means accounting statements at the end of the month, writing checks, ACHs, wires, all disbursements, receiving funds into managed bank accounts, issuing shareable receipts, doing all the compliance, the tax returns, everything, 1099s, W-2, salaried employees, non-exempt employees, everything that you could imagine that would be done internally by an accounting firm. Those are the comprehensive services that should be provided under what we call Model A fiscal sponsorship. So if I'm in your shoes, what I want to see is the list of services that are going to be provided, okay, in the agreement. Now, it could be in the body of the agreement or it could be in an exhibit. But in either case, you want to know exactly the services that the sponsor is providing. Okay, that's point one. Now, that will help you, by the way, this is a parenthetical comment, if you are talking to multiple fiscal sponsors and you want to compare apples to apples, that will help you understand more and more of what they're providing, if there's any distinctions between these various potential professional fiscal sponsors and what you're going to be receiving, right? And of course, the pricing around it. So services is super important, having a lot of clarity. For example, in the Edward Charles Foundation, which is a fiscal sponsor umbrella that we established over 10 years ago, we have 17 services that we provide for our clients. Now, that doesn't mean that every single fiscal sponsor provides those services. They provide more, perhaps. They may provide less. They may provide non-accounting services like board development or strategic planning. So really think carefully about what this fiscal sponsor is promising to do for you in their services when you're considering the pricing, okay? So that's point one. Point two, what are the rights of termination, okay? Now, this is a really kind of nuanced point that unless you've gone through fiscal sponsorship or you're an experienced business person, typically you don't think about what happens if I want to leave. Literally, I want to end the relationship, right? And all the nuanced points about ending the relationship. So the termination clause is something you should really pay attention to. In addition to that, from a practical standpoint, if the termination clause allows you the right to terminate and you like the various conditions around terminating, you're lowering your risk that even if you end up doing business with a fiscal sponsor that you subsequently realize, you know what, they're really not performing the way we wanted to, or we hope that we'd be getting more service, or any number of reasons why you don't want to, do business with this particular partner and fiscal sponsor, you can terminate without any sort of reservation. So termination is massively important for you, and you should be aware of that, okay? Another topic that I think you should be very cognizant of whether or not the fiscal sponsor agreement provides for is a provision surrounding intellectual property and the intellectual property of your charitable initiative or sponsored project. Who owns that? And it should be very clear. This should be black and white, by the way. It should be very clear that you own the rights to the intellectual property, everything associated with the charitable initiative. If the agreement is silent on that issue, there is potentially an argument that you don't own the intellectual property, okay? And clearly, that would be not the intent that either you have, nor the intent that you ever believe that the fiscal sponsor would have, that they could actually literally own your initiative, including any events, including any donor lists, and the list goes on. So it's very important that when you're reviewing these fiscal sponsor agreements, you know what to look for within the agreement to make sure it's fair and reasonable, and that all these provisions are provided for. So this document isn't just a boilerplate that you just sign your name and go, okay, these people seem great. You should take this document very, very seriously.